An antagonist is someone who actively opposes or is hostile towards the protagonist. Illustrations of this within pop culture would be President Snow versus Katniss Everdeen, The Witch versus the Sleeping Beauty, and more recently Thanos versus the Avengers. Now, if we were all blatantly honest in regard to our fear of being a protagonist, it's probably because we are all well aware of the fact that every protagonist will have an antagonist. And honestly, that scares us to death. Taking this into account, the idea of us having someone who is against us scares us into being that background character who blends into the dismal, dull, black and white pages of the story, whose only major appearance in that story is just another face in the crowd scene. If we aren't careful, we will do very little in our lives because we are petrified of having to face an antagonist. But think about that. Isn't us doing nothing actually facing our antagonist and losing? Because what if the antagonist's name is fear and his little evil minion was complacency? And together, the both of them intimidate people like us into doing nothing. So consider this for a moment. The reason that an author writes an adversary into their stories is because the antagonist brings depth to the main character's personality. The author often describes in great detail, I might add, the antagonist's strengths because they want to make the main character look better when he wins. So, who is the antagonist in our lives? It's fear, discouragement, anxiety, depression, insecurity, past hurts, addiction, and check this out, sometimes even us. Sometimes our enemy can take an insurance policy out in our lives, sit back, sip on Kool-Aid, and watch us destroy ourselves. He never even has to do a thing because we're killing ourselves. We must not become our own worst enemy. Now let me be the very first to recognize how menacing these supervillains are. And I am in no way calling any of these villains weak. But I would never call anything that God made weak either. You see, He made you, He made me in His image. And a menacing villain simply means an author has faith in the main character, us. We talk a lot about Job's faith in God, but let's not forget that Job's story began with God's faith in Job. So, how do we face our antagonist when we aren't the hero of the story? Well, we come out of the shadows and we trust the author. You see, God is our author. And according to Jeremiah 29:11, He has thoughts of peace and not of evil to give us an expected end. An expected end. So affliction and a menacing, mean, overpowering, intimidating antagonist is a direct reflection of God's trust to us, the main character in this story. So I would rather be David facing Goliath, even though he's bigger than me, than be a Saul sitting in my tent afraid. Why? Because the author's that good. And just like the Avengers brought fame to Stan Lee, and Katniss Everdeen brought fame to Suzanne Collins, just like David, we bring fame to our author, Jesus Christ. So the question is this: if the Bible were still being written today, would we be in it? And if we were, would we be the protagonist, the one that moves the story forward because we chose? Or would we be a background character who really doesn't add anything to the story? Or would we be an antagonist to ourselves? Or maybe to everyone else, like King Saul was to David? Would you be a warrior like Gideon? Or would you be one of the 22,000 that left rather than fight? Would you be brave, upright, and holy like Esther? Or would you be just another marketplace person? Or would you be the evil Haman? Or would people just simply put your story down because you refused to make a decision? You see, God has a lot of experience writing some amazing stories. The Bible's full of them. I read the back of the book, and here's a spoiler alert that you won't find on IMDb. We win.